and then thereafter we will enter into a full council meeting to address the issues that are raised and passed by the Finance Committee this evening. So at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to the Finance Chair, Mr. Westcott.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1 on our agenda this evening is consideration of a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with Main Street Russellville for the calendar year 2020.
Motion to approve.
There is a motion to approve and a second. Has each member of the committee received a copy of the independent audit that was provided by Main Street Russellville?
I have.
Okay. Is there any discussion regarding item number 1? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Item number 2 is consideration of a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with the Arkansas Valley Alliance for Economic Development to provide economic development services for the city of Russellville for the year 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and second, pardon me, for the approval of item number 2. Is there any discussion?
I spent some time at the chamber
If,
today.
if you would, Ms. Caruth, press your little button there and hold it down. There you go. Whoop.
I spent some time at the chamber today, and Paul Harville and I had some discussions and feel a little better about it. There were a couple of things that I learned today about things that have happened in the community, and there's just one thing I'd like to know, and I didn't get it before I left there. We were talking 400 jobs in this community. I'd just like to know. I know where they are. I mean, I really would.
Hey, Paul, could you step up
Why
to the
don't
mic over there,
you come up
please?
to the microphone, yeah.
This is the first time I've been to one of these meetings. I didn't know this mayor out yet. The number of jobs that we were talking about in there, I added them up. Now, folks, when I have these, I'm talking about jobs from 4 companies. Seldom do I mention the companies, but I don't mind mentioning them at some point in time because companies sometimes don't like that. But for the last, right at 3 years, last 2.5 years, the work started over 3 years ago. There's been 440. And I told you 400 today. I put a ball down and looked at it. It's 440. And the capital investment of all of them together is $257 million. Now, that is existing industry and not new. And our main one, of course, is ConAgra. If you don't mind, I'd like to tell you just a moment how that works. When I was working for you, but I wasn't being paid, and that was fine with me because I came to work. I came because I wanted to do it. We got a call from ConAgra from Omaha. And in the call from Omaha, I told Susie that I would take it. I didn't have a title or anything, but I'd take it and do it. And they immediately asked you to sign a confidentiality agreement. And you sign that agreement. Then after you sign that agreement, then you start working on a project. And it takes several months to work on it. And one thing that they asked me during this is if I wasn't going to be here anymore, who would carry out working with the city, work with the state, so forth. I said, well, I'll do it anyway. Doesn't make any difference. I'll do it. So we went down that road, and that road we went down has been a very good road for all of us, as we know. There's been some 300-plus jobs. There's been some way over $100 million investment, and we competed against another state. It didn't just happen. A lot of people say, well, it just happened. No, we competed against another state. I don't mind saying the state. We competed against Iowa, but I never will mention a town that we compete against and beat. I will mention a town that we compete against and they beat us, so I can tell you why I thought they beat us. But it's not really good to do that. But that's the way nearly all the projects work that you do. You get a confidentiality agreement, then you start working on the project. And this one is still ongoing. And out of that project came the big workforce development program that we're headed down the road and we're into now.
Mr. Harville, I have a a few questions that hopefully you can answer. In October of 2017, the city of Russellville, at the encouragement of the Alliance, purchased the Dalton King building. Our portion of that was $1.5 million. Over the last 3 years, the investment that the city taxpayers have made with the Alliance added to that, coupled with the $90,000 request for the year 2020, is just over $1.8 million that the
Now,
taxpayers...
how much did you say the city added to that? Talking about the reports that we gave off?
No, sir, if we add the $1.5 million for the Dalton King building, the $200 and almost $46,000 paid by the city in 2017, 2018, and 2019, added that with the $90,000 request for 2020, that's just over $1.8 million as the taxpayers would have spent with the Alliance. And if we recognize the fact that it takes $67 of retail sales to make $1 in the Treasury, it's going to require some business out there to generate over $123 million of retail sales for us to recover our investment. My question to you as the director of the Alliance is, we as the taxpayers have given to the Alliance a tangible amount of money. My question is, how, when, where will we receive the $123 million of retail sales to recover our investment before we even begin to make a profit? So in this report with the chamber, I guess, 400 jobs and X number of dollars generated, how does that equal, how does that translate into money back into the public treasury?
I will tell you, and I understand what you're talking about, the building and the cost. To figure that out, to go right back into the city treasury for any community is very difficult. Now, I have a handout here. It's called a return on investment. You might want to look at that and go through that because it's not just the dollar that you have. It's a lot more to that that comes out of something of that nature. Like, for instance, Tabor. Tabor's investment, I think, was $27 million. Now, how does that $27 million come directly back into the city? By doing things for the city, by doing the jobs, by doing everything else that they do. And I do have a handout here that kind of explains how return on investment works for cities. But it's not a dollar directly back into that coffer. I can't answer that, and Eric, there's not an economic developer in Arkansas that could answer that.
Okay. Well, that's the question that's been asked to me and that I have forwarded on to you is, you know, I say we, the taxpayers have given a tangible amount, a huge basket of money to the Alliance, and they're curious when and how that money will be returned to the Treasury.
Can I,
So-
let me,
Let me say this. I've talked with lots of economic developers because of your question. I said, how would you figure that for your city? And they said, I don't know. I don't think you can. AEDC, a lot of money goes into AEDC. How do you figure the money back out to the state of Arkansas? But the other things that you can figure out that is a return, you have to look at and consider how you feel like your investment is for what it did to the community.
let me also add, Paul started off earlier by saying that 440 jobs at a $240-something thousand investment into our community. Well, if you only assume 50%, and I don't know if that's a good number, of that construction cost was materials and et cetera provided in this community, then you've got $120 million investment that we get taxes off of. I don't know that it's fair to include the Dalton King building in this assessment because the Dalton King building was an investment, is a capital asset the city owns and still owns, and as soon as we sell that property, we'll recoup that investment. So I don't know that it's fair to include the $1.5 million because we do still have those assets. In relation to the other, I think you can use the estimate of, you said 440 jobs over the last 2.5 years at $30,000, say assuming $30,000 a year, that's about over $13 million a year in salaries that are going to our community for those jobs alone. So if you do the numbers, I think you can see this, the $90,000 a year that we put into the Alliance is well worth the investment.
Well, and that's what I was asking for a layman. Now, I'm certain it's easier for someone in the director of the Alliance position who deals with this kind of thing every day. to really have a thorough understanding of it. But for the layman who's just up here saying, yes, I'll give you $90,000, it helps for me to understand those numbers. Now, in this contract, it's an excellent contract, and I find no fault at all with the Alliance and the way that they have performed according to the contract that they have with the city. I think you all have done marvelously living up to this contract. I find that this contract is very activity-based and not so much results-based as far as money, tangible money generated back into the treasury of the public. And I don't know, I'm probably 1 against 7 as far as my perspective. Good contract, promises a lot of activity. In no way, shape, or form promises tangible results. So going forward, I would hope that this council and this finance committee and specifically would lead more towards a results-based contract with the Alliance when we're talking about this much money of the taxpayers' money.
I would like for you, if you can, you don't have to do it now. I do have something I think would be very interesting for you to all look at. That is the 4 major ingredients of economic development that you're going to see there. Workforce development, and that costs a lot to do it. In fact, when we started our program, you were there the morning at the breakfast when we kicked it all off. I had one of our members come up to me about a month ago and said, this is exactly what our community needs, and I'm going to give you $25,000. So we've hit it, and that's in that too that we do. Our total amount of money we spend at the Chamber and the Alliance for Economic Development of these 4 areas here is a little over $600,000 that we've spent in the last 3 years. And because we believe in these 4 elements, the state believes in it. I believe in it. Economic developers believe in it. If you look at it and you read it, I think you will believe in it too, that our community needs that. And it's another thing that you're putting there that you can have. I will also say that my guess is, I'm just going to say this, I don't think very many cities have beat us. I really don't, as far as number of jobs and capital investment. The other thing, as far as that be concerned, Conway probably has, but Conway, a synonym for Conway is Little Rock. I started the Little Rock Regional Alliance. We put Conway in it, and it's helped them a lot. But you just look at that traffic, and you can see what builds Conway. It's Little Rock. That's what builds it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm fortunate to be.
Can I sit down?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you might get tired by the time I get done talking. I've been fortunate to be the liaison to the Alliance for the last year, almost year and a quarter or so now. And to be quite honest with you, and some of you may remember this, there was a time that I was the biggest critic of the Alliance Group and our contract with the Alliance. And not to this is not putting anything previously down. I'm about to talk this guy up. Is he perfect? No. Does he give it 110% effort? Absolutely. Does he he's the ringleader, if you will, of the activity that benefits all of us. If we didn't contract with the Alliance to do this, who would be doing it? Nobody. And we have to put forth the effort. If we try for 5 and get 1, hey, that's a success. And just counting dollar for dollar doesn't work because there's so many intangible benefits. They say the dollar turns 7 times. Payroll, I can go on and on. There is a Alliance meeting once a month. It's typically the same day as our council meetings at 7:30 in the mornings at the upstairs of the Chamber of Commerce building. And I would strongly urge anyone that's got any questions about what the Alliance does for the city or our community to come to those meetings, listen, watch, and ask questions. And I think you will be very enlightened to what's going on. Now, you've got to try before you have results, and the results are out of our hands. You win some, you lose some. In this industry, you probably lose more than you win because you want to try to get as much as you want within a reasonable time frame. And the only thing I can fault the Alliance with, and Paul knows this, is I don't think they promote their activity as much as I would like for them to do. We as a city get slammed, if you will, for what are we doing for job creation? What are we doing for job development? We aren't doing anything because we aren't we hadn't taken that head on. We've contracted with the group for many years to perform these roles. So has the cities around us, so has Polk County. We put money in this to incentivize, to hopefully stimulate their activities into results. And I'm 110% on board.
Is there any further discussion regarding item number 2? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is an appropriation request from the reserves of the Street Department half-cent road tax fund for some interstate lighting. Has every member of this committee had or been able to receive a copy of the projected lighting plan?
I have.
Okay. Has anyone on this committee not had an opportunity to receive this lighting plan? Okay. What's the will of the committee?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
There is a motion and second for item number 3 to appropriate the funds in the amount of $545,000 to be used for some interstate lighting.
Mr. Chairman, can I amend that to include 3A and 3A for my amendment, for my motion, please?
Okay.
If possible.
The resolution is part of that.
So item number 3 is the appropriation, and 3A is the resolution that authorizes the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with All Service Electric Incorporated. Mr. Brown, are you seconding that motion?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion besides mine? Okay. Just a couple of concerns that I have, or questions that I have. When I travel from Fort Smith to Russellville and I notice the off-ramps and on-ramps along the interstate, I counted 1, maybe 2 that was lighted at all in that entire distance. Not that I'm against lighting on the interstate, but just a couple of observations that I have that you may find interesting. We're talking about exit 81, exit 83, and exit 84. Exit 81 is already lighted. If you're traveling eastbound, there are 2, in fact, east or west, there are 2 lights on each off-ramp. Now, most of those lights are not functioning right now, and I'm still trying to determine whether it's the city's responsibility or Entergy's responsibility to make sure that those bulbs work.
Those are city lights.
Okay, those are city-owned lights. So, again, each off-ramp, with the exception of exit 83 or the Weir Road exit, exits 81 and 84 are already lighted. The only exit that does not have lights is 83. Now, this plan is a plan to have 42 lights, if I've counted these correctly, 42 lights, 7 at each intersection, to the tune of $585,000? 545. Recognizing that this money is going to come from the Streets and Drainage Fund, is that correct?
No.
Or what are some other, let me rephrase that. What are some other things that this money could be used for? Can anyone tell me that?
We appropriated in 2018, $500,000
We did.
of this.
We set
Okay.
aside $500,000. What are some other things, for the sake of the viewing public, what are some other things that this money could be used for?
Mayor, or Mr. Smith, or Ms. Johnson, if I remember correctly, this is going to be funded out of the 10-year state highway tax that we get a portion back. It's also what funded the El Paso project, and I think it's almost anything transportation related. Fair enough?
That's correct.
So transportation-related means what? Can it be used for other city street projects?
I presume so.
Okay. Got an email today, a concerned citizen talking about again, just for an example, the railroad crossings of the DNR through our city. There are 9 of those, beginning at 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and the finishing of 16th Street. So 9 of those crossings. Now, the 16th Street crossing cost the city about $35,000. So for us to properly repair each one of those railroad crossings would cost about $315,000. And we're going to take, or we're asked to take, $545,000 this evening and spend relighting some interstate on-ramps and off-ramps that are already lighted if we just go up and change the bulbs. And for the life of me, I don't understand the mentality of that. There are other street projects around the city that are in more desperate need than to put lights on the interstate. For instance, how many of you, I'll again say in the viewing public or here on this council, have difficulty seeing the city, the stripes on the city streets at night or when it rains? They disappear. With this same money, we can put a double stripe down 57 miles of the city streets. Parkway from West Main to 331, that's only 5 miles. Instantly, Parkway, the whole length of it, could be reflective striped so that you and your grandchildren and your grandparents could drive at night or in the rain. This is the kind of money that we're talking about and other projects that we can use this money for. I'm not against putting lights on the off-ramps. I think it's foolish to put lights on the on-ramps, but on the off-ramps, specifically to Weir Road, in that there is no lights there at all. I question the timing of that, in that when a casino comes in that direction, they would be absolutely out of their minds to not provide a lighted path from the interstate to their front door, in which case that off-ramp will be lighted at their expense. So at best, let's spend about $50,000 and put some lights on the off-ramps at Weir Road. But to spend $545,000 on that particular project, I think is extremely unwise.
Mr. Westcott, if I may, I think you had some very good points. And while I don't think one trumps the other, but I would love to see you come back next month or later this month with another agenda item for those exact projects that you spoke of, the reflectors and the tape, the markings, because I'd love for us to see that. I don't think doing these lights is going to keep us from doing that. And I would love to see us do more of those markers down Parkway and other streets, the double-sided reflectors. I think that's a great idea, and I think we should have already done it. So I'd love to see that come back in an agenda in the near future.
And I appreciate that, those remarks. I genuinely do. And I'm certain that the majority of the drivers in Russellville would appreciate the reflective striping on as many of the city streets as possible. My concern is that there's only so much money available. And if we use money in such as perceived as such a, how do I put this in a polite way? The public has a perception that this particular council, as councils have in the past, have mismanaged their finances. And I'm just concerned that if we don't make some serious alterations to the way we spend their money, that they will replace the 9 people on this dais with 9 more people better qualified to handle it.
Ms. Westcott, I'd like to address that. I think it's unfair to throw the council under the bus like that. I played golf yesterday afternoon with a friend, and without any prompting on my part, he approached me. He said, "When are you guys going to put lighting on the interstate?" I said, "Well, we're going to talk about that this week." He said, "We need that. We need to make this community more inviting and welcoming, and lights do that." Now, I will say this. I have never been the biggest fan of these lightings, and so I'm not proposing that we do this project. But what I am proposing is that it's not fair to this council to dictate that we're being irresponsible because the individuals you talk to don't like the lighting, but maybe there's individuals that other council members talk to that do like the lighting. So there's a difference of opinion, and we can address that, but I think we have to be fair in the discussion.
Is there any further discussion regarding item number 3?
Yes. I want to go back to 2 years ago when we were having discussions and we were appropriating the money, and it was about opening the freeways up. Now, I'm 70 years old, and I don't see as good as most people anymore at nighttime. But I can tell you this, they aren't lit up good enough for me to come in and off of. And we talked about that, opening the city up so people can see the city, they can see where the off-ramps are, the on-ramps are at, and they know that we're open for business. And that was part of the selling point on that 2 years ago. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion regarding item number 3 and 3A?
The lights that's already up there, why haven't they been changed out? I mean, who's responsible for changing the bulbs? Does anybody know?
From my understanding, the city is responsible for the changing of those bulbs.
Glenn, can you address the question as to why the lights that are up there haven't been repaired?
Mayor, I just talked to Mr. Barrett too, and we're trying to verify, or would verify, it's not on. A little closer. The lights themselves, we do not have the equipment to replace those lights or to manage those at this time. The height of them is a challenge. So that is one of the issues, and they're in disrepair, and it's been in disrepair for years.
Is it fair to say that if they install the new lights, that we still won't have the equipment to repair those lights? And what would we do if
With
that's
the-
the case?
Yes, sir. With the lights that are being proposed, we would be looking at a contract to have lights repaired as needed. The equipment to repair those would be about approximately a 60-foot boom truck, and the city has a 45-foot at this time. So that is one of the items that we would be looking at, would be a maintenance contract to have someone that would maintain those lights and ensure that they would be available and replaced as necessary, not to fall in disrepair.
Wait a minute, you're saying that those light poles are how high?
They're 45 feet.
To the light fixture?
That is my understanding.
Okay, that's easily enough solved. There is a business in town, not mine, but there is a business in town that the city has the ability to rent a lift that could easily reach that. Minimal expense. You don't have to invest in the purchase of a lift at all. They'll deliver it for you. In
That
fact,
would be
you've probably
something
got
we
a
would
truck and
consider
trailer
would be-
already that can handle it.
We would be able to look at all the options that are available and do it as least expensive as possible.
I would guesstimate realistically about $350 is what it's going to take you to rent that lift for a day and go out and change every bulb.
Thank you.
How old are those lights?
Sir?
How old are those lights?
I believe, my understanding,
50 years?
30 or so. 30 or so years is my understanding, the lights that are out there.
How many lights is out there now at the 81, 80, 83, and the 84? Do we know how many lights?
There's
is-
8. There's 8. There's 2 at 84, or 4 at 84 and 4 at 81 on each off-ramp. Each off-ramp has 2 light fixtures.
And how many of those are working now? Do we know how
I
many
don't know that
work
any
now?
of them are lighted. I don't know that the bulbs are working in either one of them.
Because
So you're talking 8 light bulbs that need to be changed. You can do that in a day for the cost of about $350 plus the bulbs. It's not a big deal.
I do not know the extent of the damage to the lights that are out there. As my understanding, they're in disrepair, so I do not know what it would cost to repair them.
Okay. Is there any further discussion regarding item number 3 and 3A? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 4 is appropriating the funds actually to and from the reserves of the general fund for the operation of municipal offices, in regard to the EnerGov Business Management Solution Program. Citicorp is sharing the cost, the net cost to the city being $76,000. Is there a motion for item number 4?
Motion?
And I'll second that. Is there any discussion? I do have one question. It was brought up at our meeting last week about the annual fee, if and when that annual fee would ever increase. And I do have a question about that. On page 8 in the contract, section F, item number 1 under term, it says that this agreement will renew automatically for an additional 1-year renewal terms at our then current SAAS fees unless terminated. Does anyone here have an idea of what that fee may increase to, recognizing that our current fee is around $30,000?
I asked Andrew at EnerGov that same question, and he could not tell me that the last time the fees were raised on this, so it is my understanding that they will be approximately the same value as they are right now. But unfortunately, he could not give me a definitive answer of what they would be. And so unfortunately, I don't have a clear answer for you, but he didn't have the last time the fees were raised.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Westcott, can I ask a question? Is there any way that you can negotiate to lock in the fee for a period of time to ensure that?
It's locked in for 3 years, and I'm sure during that 3rd year, we could begin negotiations to lock in a rate for another 3 years or 5 years or something at that time.
What is the will of the committee regarding item number 4? Or actually, you've already made your motion and second. Is there any other discussion on item number 4? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is consideration of a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with Tyler Technologies for the EnerGov software and support services and for other purposes. Is there a motion for the
Motion.
approval? Is there a second? Is there any discussion on item number 5? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other items for the Finance Committee this evening? Mayor, I yield the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. We're going to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting at this time. We will re-adjourn in about 2 or 3 minutes while the city clerk goes get some additional paperwork. This time, I'll call the special call meeting of the City Council to order. Ms. Skelton, will you do roll call?
Ms. Caruth? Mr. Harris? Here. Mr. Tripp?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Mr. Harrell? Here. Mr. Westcott?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Brown? Here. Mr. Keller?
Here.
Mayor Harris?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Myself, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I will turn the floor over to the chairman of the Finance Committee to go through the agenda items.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1 was a consideration of a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with Main Street Russellville for the year 2020. And we present that as a motion to adopt.
Okay, have a motion on the Main Street Russellville agreement. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 2 is consideration of a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with the Arkansas Valley Alliance for Economic Development for the year 2020, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
I have a motion to enter into a contractual agreement with the Arkansas Valley Alliance. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 3 and 3A. 3 is an appropriation in the amount of $545,000 for the interstate lighting project, and 3A is the resolution authorizing the agreement with All Service Electric. And we present that as a motion to adopt.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion for appropriation of $545,000 for lighting on the interstate and a corresponding resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement for said purposes. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
I know that we discussed this ad nauseum in the Finance Committee, but again, I just want to say for the record that Exit 81 and Exit 84 already being lighted. If we put similar 2 lights at each off-ramp at Exit 83 or the Weir Road exit, the expense to the city will be approximately $52,000. We, on the other hand, are about to spend $545,000 to relight what is already lighted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. Any other discussion?
Mayor, so there's 11 lights now, 3 that's working, and we're gonna put in 45 lights on
42.
42 at the 81, 80, 83, and 84.
And all the rest of them are not.
The existing lights will be removed. They do not meet the specifications, as I understand it. Mr. Newman, is that correct? So the existing lights would be removed and the new lights would be installed. Let me also say that I did reach out to Cherokee Nation Business before we went out to bid on this particular proposal to ask them, based upon their design for a potential casino coming in at Exit 83, whether this lighting design would work with what they have planned. I wanted to make sure that we didn't put up lights and then have to tear them down as they redesign that intersection or whatever they might do there. And the feedback that I got was that the lighting as proposed would not impact or interfere with anything they have designed at that intersection.
The lights that are being proposed, are we gonna rent the poles, or are they gonna be designer poles? I mean, what kind of lighting are we talking about here?
Mr.
as
Newman,
far
would
as the
you?
poles?
There was,
Mayor, if I may, I believe it's going to be metered, and that was one of the challenges, is finding the points of connection for the energy, like the pedestals of the existing lights were out of compliance, and, visiting with Mr. Barrett a couple times over the last year or so on this, he had made the comment that this is one, between having to navigate between RDOT's requirements and energy's requirements, this was one of the most challenging, projects to design in some time.
Mr. Newman, there was a question in relation to, ownership of the light poles, is that correct,
The owners.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Yes, the light poles and the lights will be the city's.
And in this contract, it will have, if a bulb burns out, we can get out there and replace it, correct?
Well, the contract will be to install the initial lights. There'll be 14 days after everything's installed to make sure everything's working. We'll have a warranty with that initially, and then it'll be the city's responsibility to do the maintenance.
Just as the current lights that are on the interstate are the city's responsibility, is that correct?
That is my understanding.
And someone here just now said that those lighting or the light poles that we have in existence right now are out of compliance. So when you say out of compliance because the bulbs don't work, or out of compliance because why?
Well, in accordance with the design that my understanding wouldn't meet the spacing and criterion height, so it would be a mix match trying to add additional lighting.
Well, I'm not convinced that additional lighting on the currently lighted intersections is necessary at all, but that's why I was asking about the out-of-compliance issue.
So. Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. He was reminding me of the recent ordinance we've had, that the state has adopted also. They're not in compliance with the dark sky requirement, which requires the lights to face downward and not have the upward motion, so it would not be beneficial for the city to illuminate these.
So that ordinance does not require existing lights along the interstate to be upgraded to a different system? So you're talking every city along I-40 now has to go out and change their lighting poles that they put in 20 years ago?
It's my understanding if the city wants to leave in something that's not in place, the council would have to pass a resolution showing it's cost prohibitive to make a change.
So so you're saying we're gonna have to replace these poles anyway because of this?
Well, if we are going to go and change, well, number one, not sure of the status of the disrepair of all the lights, so there's an expense associated to investigate what's going on there. And at this point, we were tasked with designing the lights to meet state and federal code for the interstate, and that's what the city had hired a consultant to do at this point. So the status and what the repair necessary to meet the current codes, current criteria, I have not personally investigated to answer that properly.
Can you address the fact these new lights are going to be 60 feet tall? And what you've done, what the Public Works has done in relation to assessing potential maintenance on these lights and the cost to the city going forward for that particular action?
Yes, sir. The light poles are approximately 45 foot tall, and we were investigating options on how we would perform the maintenance. One of the items was to have a contract available as a standby for local service. One would be to purchase a vehicle, which I don't believe is the route we would want to do, but we did investigate. The cost was approximately $180,000 to $195,000 for a vehicle to access those lights. And one of the council members indicated there's also availability of a man lift that the city could rent and utilize at a much lower cost to access those.
Isn't there, okay, I was told today by Kenneth that it would cost about $2,600 a year for a service contract to maintain
There
those
was a
lights.
$2,400 service contract quotes we got, and it also, in addition to the call out, there was a hourly rate in parts.
Is there any further discussion regarding items number 3 and 3A?
Did I hear correctly in the Finance Committee meeting that in 2018, this money was originally appropriated? $500,000 was originally appropriated?
$500,000 at that time, because we didn't know what the specific cost was.
Okay, were those funds like set aside? So we've already got the $500,000 that we've set aside for this specific project 2 years ago?
And each year it has to be reappropriated for that purpose in the budget process.
Just renewed, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mayor, I would like to share a quick little story, just as an example here. So like Mr. Brown said, about 2 years ago, or maybe longer, is kind of when this surfaced. And there was a council member then, and she's no longer on the council. And she called me one day, one night. She had made several trips to family or something in Oklahoma. And she called one day and said, you know, I'd been opposed to that project, but not anymore. We've got to do that project. And she said, I was needing to stop coming across Oklahoma, and I was scared to stop on an exit. So many of those exits were not lit black, and just a single female just was by herself was not a good idea. And you don't know what's there, you don't know what's open for business. And so I just share that as, you know, as a testament of a previous council member, now just a, you know, member of our community. And, you know, that was interesting to see her have a change of heart on that because of a personal experience. And, these lights, I contribute like, you take your kids trick-or-treating on Halloween. What do you tell them? You tell them not to go to the houses without when the front porch light's off, okay? Because nobody's home, or they don't want company, they don't want visitors, they don't want kids knocking on their door. When we light our exits, it's just inviting to our community. Yes, it's a lot of money. Everything we do is a lot of money, unfortunately. And if it's inviting for our community and it's a safety enhancement for our community, I'm all for it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes.
Items number 4 and 5 together. Number 4 is an appropriation in the amount of $95,000 for the purchase and implementation of the EnerGov Business Management Solution. And item number 5 is the resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement with Tyler Technologies, and we present that as a motion to adopt.
Have a motion for items number 4 and 5 associated with an appropriation and a resolution for the mayor and city clerk to enter, city clerk treasurer to enter an agreement with Tyler Technologies. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Ms. Ruth, did you have a comment?
I think it's been discussed enough.
Okay. All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Westcott, is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the last item on the agenda. The meeting, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn, meeting adjourned.